Okay, the hour is now. Welcome to Ratio's second seminar this semester about Germany. 2 weeks ago, me and Professor Magnus Söderberg discussed Germany's energy situation with relation to Sweden, and that is on YouTube now, if you want to see it later. Today's seminar comes after a German election with possible tectonic changes in the German economy happening as we speak. So it's a lot of things happening. I saw last night. Today's speaker is a dear friend of Ratio. It's Professor Dr. Hubertus Bardt. He leads the 10 times bigger IW Köln, which could be seen as a German big sister organization to Ratio, and we meet quite regularly. And Hubertus will today give us a view about Germany's economy, which, at least from the slides, I think is very interesting, and it paints a little bit of a bleak picture. But since we are so interrelated with Germany, it's quite bad for us too. And afterwards, Hubertus and I will talk about what I find interesting, and there will be questions also, I think, in the chat. So Hubertus, the presentation is yours.
Jonas, thank you very much for having me here and inviting me. I will share a couple of slides and try to tell you a bit about the current situation of the German economy in the beginning, and then end with the general elections and what it means and what's going to change. So I hope everyone can see the slides.
Yes, we can.
So the first part, and that's why the debate about the German economy is so intense here right now, is that we are facing a third year of stagnation, or let's say a third year with no growth at all. We have had 2 years of a mild decline of the economy, minus 0.2-0.3% per year, and the current expectations for next year are something between slightly positive and slightly negative, so basically a zero again. So that's 3 years with no growth, and that's why people are getting more and more puzzled. We see first effects on the labor market. We see different problems. I come to that in a minute within the economy. But if you look, take a bit a longer perspective, and these have been growth rates, and you see the big decline in 2020 with COVID, and the big increase in 21 and then 22. If you look at that not in growth rates, but looking at the level, we see that we are basically right now, that's the left-hand side of the slide, that GDP is basically where it has been prior to COVID. So we are basically at the GDP of 2019. Industrial production peaked in 2018, and value added in manufacturing as well. So we shouldn't talk just about those 3 years of stagnation or recession. It's a longer, almost 6 years period of stagnation right now, or we are in the 7 year of stagnation. On the right-hand side, it's a big sectors. We've seen a huge decline in construction. That's especially after the increase of interest rates, when private construction dropped drastically. We see that manufacturing recovered after COVID, even recovered during the times of high energy prices after the Russian invasion in the Ukraine, but since then lost again and is a little below. It's 1 percentage point below the 2019 pre-COVID level. The only thing growing constantly was the service industry, the service sector, which of course includes government, and a development where increase of government is balancing the decrease of the rest of the economy. That's of course no long-term feasible situation. So that's where we are. And I think that's an interesting or a good idea of having a look at what really changed or how much it changed. Since the reunification, we were pretty close to a stable growth path, and we left that with COVID. We left that with the energy price shock afterwards, and didn't come any close to there afterwards. If we are looking into the different sectors, we see very different stories. Currently, no very good stories, but it's not that all companies, all industries are facing the same challenges. So you see here a decline of almost 10% compared to the pre-COVID level. That's production. Production declined quicker than value added. Value added, it's in total pretty stable. Well, pretty stable, of course, is not enough and can't be satisfying. But production declined more, which means that we are more trying to add more value added into our production, focus on higher value added goods, focus on high price goods where differentiation is possible, and so on. But if I try to explain the crisis of manufacturing, I think there are three groups with different problems. The first one is the group of the energy intensive industries, and they've lost 20% and more of production and a lot of value added as well quickly after the price increase in 2022, after the Russian invasion in Ukraine 3 years ago. So we've lost most of our ammonium production, very energy intensive or based on natural gas. We've lost part of the aluminium production. We've lost part of paper production, very energy intensive processes and productions. And most of those things will not come back. So these industries are working on where can we have product with an additional value added, where we can be competitive with a higher price level. We are not at the price level of 2022, of course, but still relatively higher internationally. And we have been a high-cost country, high-cost energy country before. So that's one group. The second group is basically the automotive industry. Automotive industry is the most important sector for Germany, is responsible for most innovation, most investments, and has a huge footprint in other industries as well, like chemical industry, metal production, electronic and electrical industry, machinery, and so on. So they are in the middle of a transformation process. When we're talking about battery electric cars, digitization, autonomous driving, and so on. That's not the same problem as the energy intensive industries. So they have their product-based problem on their own. And what comes on top of that is the high or the increase of car production in China, overcapacities over there, and more problems to, well, basically to sell cars in that market. So that's a big market. That's I mean, the total market is growing, but the market share and the market volume of international brands is shrinking. And the third one, the third group of problems is, well, I would call it something like a frustrated Mittelstand. So the medium-sized or larger medium-sized companies, or often family-owned companies, often old, very pragmatic companies somewhere in the regions in Germany. And many of them have 10, 20, 30,000 people working for them globally. And they are very frustrated because of high taxation, because of huge amounts of bureaucracy, things like value chain legislation, and so on and so on. And that frustration very much focused or has focused on the last coalition, the Ampel, the traffic light coalition with Social Democrats red, Liberals yellow, and the Green Party green. So they have really been frustrated with that coalition and had the impression that no one's listening to us. No one is taking our problems for serious. And that's maybe one point where a new coalition can change things, if not a real change, then at least a change in tone and a change in communication, a change in the psychology, which is always part of the economic development. So we have a lot of shocks that explain these problems, short-term shocks and structural shocks. Geopolitics, we're the most open among the larger economies in the world. So all these protectionism developments, the trade war that started yesterday between the US and Canada and Mexico, and again announced tariffs on Europe, will hit us. Insecurity is a problem. Our weak own consumption and investment is a problem, and we've lost competitiveness. And what's short term is not solved short term. It's also longer term developments. Again, geopolitical questions, transformation, innovation, the quality of Germany as a business location. And what's different between the parties is and now I'm coming closer to economic policy, and what may change with a new government is the approach for industrial policy or economic policy. So my headline here is industrial policy, but there are two big parts. On the left-hand side, on the chart, there's what I call horizontal industrial policy. You can also name it structural policy or general economic policy. Then we're talking about infrastructures, about the quality of government, about red tape, about taxation, about the innovation system, and so on, or measures that are relevant for all companies and in all sectors. On the right-hand side of that chart, there are sector-specific or vertical industrial policies. And on the far right side, it's this idea of national champions. So picking the winners, using the government to define a national or a European champion to support him, even if there's conflict with basic principles of competition policy. I'm not a big fan of that, and typically the German industrial policy is not focusing on that, but there are always initiatives, and I mean subsidizing battery production because battery is important for future automotive value chains, or supporting semiconductor investments. Where you can argue that we are in the subsidies race, and it's difficult to find the right market solution. But there's always, and that's especially at the Green Party and the Social Democratic Party, and what we see in the future is with very high probability a coalition of conservatives and social democrats. Conservatives are not can't really rule out that kind of picking the winner, natural champions in industrial policy, but I suppose it will not be the dominating framework of what we see in a new coalition. So that's more conflict within the European Union. There are more often these kind of initiatives in France, in other countries, and also in Brussels. Then we have sector-specific policies as a result of decarbonization policy and decarbonization targets, and because of resilience and external threats issues. I think those topics will remain, and it will remain very difficult to draw the line between what's necessary, what kind of support is necessary, or what kind of restrictions are necessary for security reasons. So we're starting to discuss Chinese wind parks, that part of critical infrastructure, and then could it be a critical thing? So and it's really difficult, and there's no easy answer to where is that line, what kind of government influence is necessary, and where does it have to stop? And I think we see a lot of that. We will see a lot of that in the next years, on national level, on European level. What's the new and what's a baseline for even successful decarbonization and successful investment in security is that we have, I mean, best case, a booming or at least a growing economy, and then we are on the horizontal side. So that's one of the biggest tasks of our new government, to improve these investment conditions. And we've got worse in, and I see some of that is in German, I'm sorry for that. We've got worse in terms of attractiveness for investors. We are still comparing, and here we compare 45 countries, compare the business investment conditions for manufacturing companies. We are still okay. We are still on in that calculation, on which is based on figures from 2022, still on fourth place out of 45, but we are getting weaker. We are getting weaker where we have been good in the past. So we are weaker in governance compared to others. We are getting weaker in infrastructure compared to others. I mean, German infrastructure is still good compared to many other countries, but still, it's the advantage is declining. Resources, which in our case is not natural resources, it's qualified personnel. That's a problem, and it's becoming more difficult, and it will in the future due to demographic change. But on the other hand side, on the cost side, we are on place 45 out of 45. So you could argue it couldn't get worse, but still. And that's labor costs, it's energy costs, it's taxation, it's all of that. And if you run a business and you're getting more and more expensive, but your product is getting less and less attractive, that's no wonder that people aren't buying it anymore. And that's what we see in our investment. My last slide. We are talking a lot beyond economic issues about defense and what's necessary to spend in defense in the future. And what we calculated here is the gap in our budget until 2028. So the larger is for the whole years of that period 25-28, and the smaller line is just the year 2028. So the gap that we need to close when we want to fulfill the 2% NATO target or a higher, and we're talking about 3.5, some people even 5%. And if you're looking at 3 or 3.5, we're talking about 150 to 200 billion euros missing in our budget. And what the government, no, not the government, but the both parties that will probably form a coalition next month agreed on yesterday was to make that easier by accepting the larger part of defense spending from the debt brake. So additional debt is possible if you want to spend 3% or have to spend 3% of GDP for defense. 2% percentage points can be taken on the capital market. And next to it, they also agreed on a 500 billion special vehicle, so additional debt, basically 500 billion for the next 10 years for investment. And there are a lot of reasons why we need to spend much more on investment. That's not and that's a real change of our fiscal policy, especially very big change of the Conservative Party. And we'll see if that really will become law. It will have to be decided within the next 10 days, and they need the Green Party to agree on that, because they need a 2/3 majority for that. So if I look at the last words on the priorities of the next government, it will be defense, and it will be improving investments, public investment. Therefore, we have that fund, or maybe we have private investment. We have to work on investment conditions. I think that will change compared to the last government. On the other side, with the Social Democrats on board, there won't be big cuts in social security. There won't be huge initiatives to save money within the budget. There will be initiatives to reduce red tape, and to do that together with the European Commission, where some first initiatives have been announced a couple of days ago. So with that as an introduction, I would be very glad to have your questions and try to answer them.
Thank you. I can start with some of mine, and Carl maybe bring me some if there are. So something I've been thinking about, and as you said in your presentation, young voters must have never seen anything but a recession or a stagnation. I imagine if you're between 18 and 22, for as long as you have read the newspaper, it has just been going slightly downwards or sideways. Do you have any idea why they are voting in such large extent on AfD and similar parties?
So, sorry, I didn't get that. Why there's been a similar focus on the stagnation,
Yeah.
or why we didn't see that stagnation before?
Yeah, but I think young people must have not seen anything else, but stagnation for the law. If you were 11 years old and started reading the newspaper, now you're going voting at 18. You have seen a quite bleak picture of the world. Do you think
that's true, and we also see that in the election results. So 3 years ago, the parties who have been most successful among young voters have been the Liberals and the Greens. I don't know, 20% plus each. And now it's the far left and the far right. It's the AfD and then the left party. So on the one hand side, there's always a big swing, and always the youngest people tend to be a little more radical. But indeed, they experienced a long term of stagnation, but I don't know if they really understood that as a stagnation. They've seen a lot of, or experienced a lot of a series of crises, basically. They've been, and that's also true for the whole public. There has been that COVID crisis, and everyone finally was glad that had ended, and then it was the energy price shock after the Russian invasion in Ukraine, and then suddenly it's now what we experienced with that starting weeks of the new US administration, which also people experience as crisis. And so I think that during that crisis, we had in total a period of stagnation, and GDP has been in total combined over the years 700 billion euros lower than it would have been if we just have continued that growth path. I don't think that people really realized that until last year or this year, when figures with second year of economic decline and first layoffs became public.
Yeah, a question from the audience. There was talk about debt break from the infrastructure. Is energy infrastructure included in this? And what is your opinion of what Germany needs to do in order to lower energy prices?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think where we are now, we don't know anything about the rules and regulation of that that infrastructure fund. And really can be used, or where it can be used for or not. We calculated that there is a demand, or that we need about that size, maybe a little more amount of money for the next 10 years for all kind of infrastructures on various levels of government, including transport infrastructure, road and railways. They have been built, I mean, we have thousands of bridges that have been built in the 60s and 70s with much less traffic, and that's a typical reinvestment phase where we are now. It's energy infrastructure, and especially investment in grids, which is now done privately and paid for by the electricity consumer, but that's the most dynamic element in the electricity prices. And if you want to reduce them, that's probably something where public money can be used, and so that could be part of that. We're also talking about schools, about hospitals, and of course about infrastructure necessary to make decarbonization successful. So, but we don't know anything about what they really think, and just have that headline number right now.
Another question from Patrick Joyce, chief economist of Almega. Could a fall in energy prices, particularly the price of natural gas, revitalize the German industry?
Oh yes, it could. It wouldn't bring back the very energy intensive things that we've lost, and there is a tendency to reduce very energy intensive production and have more, let's say, labor and innovation intensive production also in energy intensive industries. And when I say labor intensive, I mean if you have smaller scales, smaller lots, have to differentiate products, do it specifically for your customers, and so on, you need more personnel, more people thinking about that. So we won't get those. We won't get anyone back who has been here just because of energy prices. And my aluminium example, they came here because electricity was very expensive in the 50s or so. That won't happen again. But it's a way to show and to make investors confident and that they can be successful here and make their business here. And there are many companies, not only energy intensive companies, that struggle with these high energy prices. And if that burden would be relieved, their willingness to invest would be higher.
Martin Wolf of Financial Times said quite recently that Germany missed the last industrial revolution, like the digitalization, and was fearing that Germany might miss the next one also. Do you think they need some package, or what needs to be done to bring Germany a little bit further ahead on digitalization and that part of the economy?
Yeah, I'm not. It depends a bit to what you're looking at. We are pretty bad in digitization of the public sector, and that adds up to the red tape complaints, and that's really difficult to explain why it is the case. If I look at manufacturing, there are a lot of companies who after accepting that we won't invent the second Google or something like that, that kind of tech industry is not here, and we are there's not very much optimism, or hasn't been very much optimism to create something like that here. After that, companies have been able to really bring together traditional engineering know-how and software know-how, what we are calling Industry 4.0. So bringing industrial processes and products into the internet. And if you look at the big trade fairs right now, you see nothing but that. And the next step must be to use that with AI. We probably will not have the next AI set of foundation models here in Germany or in Europe, but adapting it to industries or sectors, industries, and then into companies, and use the strong engineering know-how, which is a big advantage of our production here. So bring that together. That's a real opportunity, and finally addressing digitization in the public sector as well.
Here's a hard question, for me at least. Pontus Nyman, Don Jorgensen, the commissioner, said that the EU commissioner said that the EU will try to disconnect gas prices from electricity prices. Do you think that will work? Please elaborate.
I think the easiest way to do that would be to subsidize gas in electricity production. So that if we want to keep the electricity market a market, then there will have to it has to work according to market rules. And one market rule is that the marginal producer sets the price in such a market, commodity market. So the marginal consumer in the future will be a gas-powered power plant. As the other very flexible thing is lignite. Oh no, it's not lignite, it's hard coal, and we are reducing, for climate reasons, we are reducing coal. So we are pushing coal out of the market, having more gas in it. Sometimes it can be a flexible biomass plant, but typically it will be a gas power plant. And that means that the marginal price of gas is relevant for the electricity price. And I don't really see how you can change that without destroying the markets, the price system in electricity production, or by subsidizing the gas price and subsidizing gas used in electricity production. And that has been done discussed in some countries during the gas price crisis in 2022. But I really don't see it as an answer for our electricity price problem.
A good answer, I would say. Merz, he has wanted to be chancellor for maybe 25 years. Do you think he's ready, and what does he want to do?
What does who want to do?
Mr. Merz, the incoming chancellor.
Yeah. So first of all, he wants to become chancellor. I think his two priorities are organizing defense, or three priorities. One is defense, one is economic policy. It's not so much fiscal policy. So I think he will work more on making companies more, or becoming more attractive for investors, making companies more confident. And he's a transatlantic, so I'm pretty sure he will, and the European. I think in the conservative tradition of German-French partnership, transatlantic partnership, and I think it will be one of his priorities as well to fix that. Or at least to strengthen the European ties if it's difficult to fix the transatlantics for the next 3 years and 11 or 10 and a half months.
I have a last question to reflect on. I've been looking at the topographic maps on Germany of populations. Why anyone would do that is maybe a stranger thing, but it doesn't seem like Germany have so many big cities. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Compared to the population, it's quite Berlin is twice the size as Stockholm, 3 times, but it's not this super cities. Like if you look at the Russian topographic map, we have 2 peaks that are enormous. And how do you think that affects the German economy, considering maybe books like The Triumph of the City from Ed Glaser, and who talks about innovation in cities and how that develops?
Yeah. I think as a society, it's an advantage that we have these diversity or those not dominant centers. And that has been that's just the result of our history, that there have been many small units before forming a national state until the 19th century, during industrialization. And that's why every small, well, let's say separate country wanted its industry and developed them, and then a lot developed in the regions. And that gives stability to the country, and that reduces the distance between rural areas and urban areas. And we don't have too many of these left behind areas. We have a lot of them in the eastern part of Germany, where those Mittelstand companies haven't been there anymore after reunification. They've been destroyed in socialist times. And then those regions were the one where young people, especially young women, moved away. And we see that in the regions where the decline of population was huge, the support for the far right and the populists in general is higher. So for the stability of our economy, of our society, that's very helpful. It can be a problem if companies, sometimes they have logistical problems because they've been founded in totally different times somewhere, and it's from a logistical point of view, it doesn't make sense, but that's where they are. And it can be, and it is a problem for a lot of them if they are in the rural areas or smaller towns and try to attract people. So try to attract them from universities. That's why many of them have their own like IT centers or innovation centers closer to the metropolitan areas. But that didn't lead to let's say a decline of companies in the regions yet. So they are managing to bring that together, and also it forces them to be attractive, and it forces the region to try to be attractive as well.
Yeah, that was my last question. And if we don't have anything else, I will have to say thank you. It's been very enlightening and have learned a lot. So thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone listening.